Hello, I feel a bit like imposter syndrome between all these bright people talking with these massive slides with statistics and data. I feel like, my God, how can I ever reach that sort of level? So, but I'm going to try from my side. Um, so I will talk a bit about what I think is important, actually, to develop the whole ecosystem, why it's important today that we're here at Oncode. Because this is not just an initiative that we supported, it's one of the 50 initiatives of the National Growth Fund that we're actually still supporting, that we're still working with to make sure that we actually make impact. We actually cures are being developed and impact is being made on everyday lives of people, and long-term earning capability of the Netherlands is being created. Very long-term, as someone just reminded me. I'll go through a few topics around the importance of partnerships, about funding the project, about valorization, the importance, and economic and societal impact. So, the power of partnerships. Actually, partnerships is also science. You might not know, but I have a bit of a weird background. So, with a CEO of Stock Exchange and running Tech Leap and Growth Fund, and initially actually even some in health. But across the time, I've seen that this is a science that we should also study, because we invest a lot of money to actually develop things like this, and that would be great if we learn from other experiments and bring that also to reality. So if you look at the quantum physicist, difficult word, of David Peat, he developed a new center of learning where he actually investigated how innovation comes to market, how change comes to society, and how to model it. And his model that I really liked was the model of the sea, where the waves are coming, where we are actually molecules ourselves. And the thing is, we know waves are coming. We don't know when they will come, if they will come, how big they will be, and and which ones will be the most impactful. And now, of course, any CEO that has been on a wave will tell you and will write a book, The 5 Reasons Why I Created the Wave. And that's fantastic. But reality, of course, is not so simple. So if we know this, then we see the importance of collaboration, because only with many molecules together, you can actually build a better vision of predicting the wave and together prepare on being ready for the right wave to come. Another piece of research that to me was very important was from Ian Hathaway. He tested actually how system interventions work and how growth works. And it's actually interesting to see that there's a direct correlation between the proximity of partners and the growth they generate. Even in meters, there's a correlation. So it's quite fascinating that, and actually when we researched at TechLeap, for example, we saw that Holland is not so well connected. We're a small country, but a lot of people in the industry didn't know each other. Founders didn't know each other. So something at that time we fixed over there. But it's these sort of signs that we also need to bring in practice, because especially projects like Oncode, projects with health, are so complex from a perspective of science, but even from an extended value of death, that's impressive compared to a fintech. So there we need collaboration. We need to connect each other, to not run into roadblocks, and to really then together make an impact, connect each other. Also, when you ever want to think about go-to-market or prepare, you need to be early on connected to investors to understand what they will do. But of course, to the clients, even more importantly. We had patients in the room here. Super important, because that's where the impact is being made. And TRL is fantastic, but what I call CRL is more important, customer readiness level, because in the end, yes, it's all fantastic, but it needs to be with a purpose. I've seen cases where teams have been doing a lot of great stuff, but actually not focused, and then you're just producing a lot of intermediate results. And that's a shame, because we should be able to do better. The next topic will be around funding. It also requires collaboration. Let me show that one. Now, when I was a CEO at the Amsterdam Stock Exchange, I thought that the market was basically okay to fix anything, right? I mean, and I thought, really, if there's a big market failure, then the government maybe has to step in for a moment, and always with the idea to pull back. And then I came at the growth fund, and I saw actually that in a lot of areas, the soil on which we build needs to be also good. We need to have good education with delivering great talent. We need to have all these things in place to actually, for the rest, to properly work. And also research and development has many phases and takes a very long time and a lot of money. So it means that for businesses nowadays, large businesses that do R&D, the typical return on investment and the patience is around 3 years for a lot of things. And the rest is seen as a sort of experimental money to gamble on maybe something will be successful. That's also why you see, in my view, a shift towards a lot of startup activity and also close to universities, because actually there is where a lot of the experimenting is happening. And we need to make sure that there's funding in place also for the longer term for that to happen. And so when being involved in a company like that or in an initiative, it's good in any point in time to be aware of the mix of funding that is there, whether it's subsidy, very early stage, low TRL, which is way too experimental for a lot of companies, to, in the end, like private market funding, and in between blended finance, where also at Growth Fund we've been working, for example, with InvestNL to come up with sort of other models to fund things that are not exactly fitting in one or the other category. Next one is valorisation. So valorisation is about actually making money. So I don't know who, raise hands, who here is in this business to make money? Hey, it's a good question, right? Because by itself, sometimes in Holland, you think that earning money is terrible. And of course, if you have here the former CEO of a stock exchange, who am I to say that that's not important? Or my track record in that sense is not so good. But I think in a way, it is a risky endeavor you're all going into. So it's important to be aware. And so important to be aware that by itself, the amount of companies starting is massive. And of course, I just heard someone say that, of course, the successes, they get highlighted, the green dot on the top, right? But the rest is a tough road. And I think you probably know better than any audience I've ever had, because you're probably, some of you are in that phase. It's a real struggle. So it's important actually that we, that there is, for me, there is a reason why money is important. There need to be drivers in the system. So what I've seen in the past, especially when I've myself attacked with research, for example, we saw that a lot of time government focus on unblocking stuff. So let's take away the blocking part. But in the end, there need to be natural drivers there in place, because otherwise the car will not move when you unblock it. So it's really important that we check, are they the right drivers? Are we doing the top-notch things in worldwide, or is this fantastic in this part of Amsterdam? Is the people we involve, the people we partner with, are they top-notch, or are they maybe not helping us that much? There's also a lot of people active in the field I've seen that not always are very helpful in the end, but with the best intentions. So I think it's actually quite important, these sort of initiatives here, where the top people actually helping design the program, make sure you get connected to the right people, and that you are set up with the right connections for growth. One example is Aceta Pharma. It's actually interesting because it was a forgotten product of Organon at the time. And then a pharma plus research plus biotech companies actually worked on this. And in the end, it became the most used cancer medication. It's a 20 billion revenue on a yearly basis. And that by itself is not important, but it helps people's lives. So it's super important that people there across the chain, so people later stage and biotech and Organon and also startups that were involved actually help deliver this value. And with that, actually, you don't just generate money, but also what we see in the growth fund is that those partnerships that already work longer, they are quicker in making progress. We see that some projects that are like an occasional collaboration take a long time to get at the same level. So the more we are connected in that sense and already collaborating, the better it is. So a side effect of a lot of things we do, for example, Horizon programs, is not so much, only 10% gets the funding. But one of the side effects, it sets up partnerships for the future. And the same is for the growth fund. Yeah. Demonstrating economic and societal impact. Well, at the National Growth Fund, I think, I don't know who heard of it, but I think most people know it from last elections and the fact that a lot of the funding was cut, to be honest. And what I think is important is that we make visible what the impact is of innovation. And to the point at the start, that's also a form of science. So historically, the way all these things are monitored are almost linear, like the traditional companies, like how many staff members are working there, etc. When I was at TechLeap, the government couldn't even identify a startup from an MKB bakery, sort of, in their systems, right? So if you want to understand, for example, the impact of the COVID support thing that we created, you need to be able to identify who it is and what they do. And so also there at the Growth Fund, we are actually in the middle of a change because, first of all, innovation will never, it's like a, let's explain this. If you have an acre and you start sowing seeds, like sunflowers or whatever, then you can follow that, right? It's clear. But innovation doesn't come up like that. It will actually, a lot of places will not come up at all. And what comes up are rare flowers that you couldn't even have predicted 2 or 3 years ago. A plan for AI 3 years ago, if it's still accurate today, was probably too vague, right? Because how can you still have the same plan today as you had 3 years ago? It's a completely change of the whole ecosystem, although some elements, as one of the previous speakers said, have stayed stable, but a lot of things, applications, etc., have changed. So I think it's important that we measure this, that we demonstrate it, that we share it. It was great to see that the intro of Oncode, that the subtitles that was somewhere funded by the National Growth Fund. I think people need to understand how important these instruments are. Because without this subsidy, the whole first part of innovation is just not working. And yes, there are instruments, of course, like WBSO. It's a tax arrangement for companies that can deduct innovation. And there's other instruments, of course, out there. But still, we need to keep developing this and keep making sure that we show that there's an impact, and that also, in the end, people in the street outside this bubble understand the importance of this. What I discovered when I joined National Growth Fund, and when also the political changes were there, hardly anyone was raising a voice, to be honest. It was like everyone was busy with other things, like, oh, we had the talent issue, and we had the fiscal issue, and oh yeah, somewhere was the innovation. Because for a lot of people, innovation is not the first, not the second, not the third, maybe the fourth battle. And for big companies, this sort of subsidy defines where they do research, not whether they do research. Right? So it's just how attractive is it to do research in the Netherlands, which helps us all, because if that is the case, we all have more activity and people at work. So I think it's important that we show those impacts, we share them, and also out there make sure that the people around us also know this and understand. Because in the end, only then, when they know how valuable it is, that their cancer, like the previous film, their cancer gets treated by new experimental cancer treatment, only then everyone will understand how important it is to keep investing long-term in the future. Now, at the start, I said that, I think one of the points is that for me is a special day because actually I started my career in experimental treatment of cancer. This will be my last speech as a director of the National Growth Fund because I will go back into health tech myself. So in that sense, it feels like 30 years after starting my first footsteps in bringing IT into treatment, I will go back in this space. So in that sense, also super inspiring to be here today and to listen to all the stories.
And with that,